Nintendo, kill the beat.
I don't know who, somebody need to hear this. Y'all don't speak Hebrew, that's Yiddish. How the fuck you try to label us anti-Semitic? We the Israelites, blacks, native Hispanics. The Germans get locked up for the Holocaust. Meanwhile, black people still up in the Holocaust. 100 million of us died in the transatlantic. 6 million died. Y'all want the world to never forget it. You can never be a Jew. You a Ashkenaz. This ain't a star dum-dum. A gun that would die. Yeah, Yeezy told the truth and got ostracized. Not one person in the Bible had on a yarmulke. We were slaves in America like we was in Egypt. Y'all don't even fit the curses in the Torah neither. Y'all was blind to the truth. I had to make it clear. How Jerusalem, your land, your people came from Europe. That was 1947. Yo, menorah got 9 sticks. It's really only 7. Yeah, it's us against the world. Armageddon. This what happened when you inherit lies from your ancestors. Y'all the synagogue of Satan with them black hats. Your whole nation sitting ducks, Aflacs, bunch of thieves and culture vultures ain't nothing kosher. To tell the truth, you vagabonds don't have a culture. Macedonia, Alexander and Philip, you a convert, so tell me, how the fuck is you Israel? That don't make you the people just cause you live there. Why my people can't hate your people like y'all hate Hitler? All the prophets was black and was called nigga. Y'all don't even fit the description that's in the scriptures. Abraham, all the way down to Jacob, we the real Jews. Y'all don't study Christ, y'all follow the Talmud. Keep it real, yeah, let's keep it real. Cold hard truth, it give you chills. Say y'all Jewish cause y'all ain't really them. About to do them like Hammond, it's the Feast of Purim. You BK undefeated, this an easy win. We was born fighting y'all the evil twin. Jacob took hold of his heel, then out came his little red bass and they kosher deals. It's only 12 tribes, y'all trying to make it 13. Esau despised his birthright, the Lord cursed him. He ain't the devil who is, I'm still searching. Ask your rabbi, why he give them babies herpes? I don't know what's worse, that or you claiming that you a Maccabee. I'm about to cancel, everybody trying to cancel ye. I ain't afraid to speak, that's what I do. They riding to the core, I'm just judging them by their fruit. Cause they ain't suffering curses. If I was carnal, I promise I'd punch you in person. I know this an uncomfortable subject. They making millions off our culture and black people suffering from it. Yeah, they don't believe in Christ. They the Antichrist. Make a living off of niggas. They're a parasite. I ain't afraid to tell the truth. Niggas terrified. I'm about to go DEFCON 4. I ain't satisfied.
That is proof. That is absolute proof that they know we are the real Jews. That's absolute proof. Now, you got the records. Go find me a white Jew on any archaeology in Egypt anywhere. You will never find a piece of archaeology with white people as slaves in Egypt. So don't tell me that they were slaves and it's their identity, and they know it. And I know the blasphemy of them that say they are Jews. The Lord knows the blasphemy of you so-called white people that say you are Jews and you are not Jews. You are not the people of the law. You are not God's chosen people. God's chosen people are living in the hills of America. God's chosen people are in poverty, depression in the streets of America. God's chosen people are walking around in America with no identity. That's where God's chosen people are.
I got you. Let it rap real quick. Look. The city eyes. It's time to folk off. My God, a real nigga. Cause he wasn't no flaw. Posted on the corner like a watchdog. Family secure, got that shot in the closet by the mop ball. Fuck what they heard, tell them it's all true. Be cautious, that foundation falls till you fall through. They gon' fall. Look, I keep this shit 50 times 2. Ain't no more heart in this game, I'm John Q. We pulled it in the avalanche, way above average. Revenge taste sweet, told them me an apple tree. Left us in the valley, flip bones, this where hope found. Jabba, come on, man, dark sands get broke down. Quad, telling me how the crackers cow it to a go down. Focus out, nigga, I lay that game down. I feel his pain, cause nothing is the same now. Let a light shine like heaven through a rain cloud. Glock have a fit like my child, no tangent. Try to warn them niggas we bear arms like tarantulas. Them other niggas rap, I make anthems. I really seen prophets under this banner. Enemy got down on camera. Told my design I wanted black and white like a panda. I'm better than that nigga that's some dirty to handle. Look, I move like a Brazilian, precious cargo, spirit Asian, but I got a new semi-auto. Wave that bitch around like where's Waldo. Sleep if they won't. I cut through they Z's like I'm Zorro. Pay me for his name, so I gotta keep that steel clutch. Trust me, I'm not with your die. Squeeze till it click like Dorothy when the heels touch. The world got me dumb, I don't feel much. Round with Yara down, just left the state bridge. Looking for a bitch better than Baby's kid. Remember I dropped Quiet Storm, I've been gone ever since. Still in the field, fuck them niggas on the fence, yeah.
Shalom Israel. Y'all by Shem Al Shah Brak thumb to the brothers. Y'all Shamal the thun by Shem Al Shah to the sisters. Excuse me. I'm Prince Officer Karan Yala of the ISUBK under Commandant General Yohana. Holding down the Wednesday night law class for Officer of 1,000. Not to I'll be filling in for my brother today. So as you can tell by the title, you understand, we're going to go into the children of Israel not choosing the oppressor's ways, right? Now, Blacks, Latinos, and Native American Indians, of course, we have been brainwashed to think the stuff that we've been taught to do in America is normal when it's abnormal. You understand? Like, in order for you to understand what's right and what's wrong for Blacks, Latinos, and Native American Indians, you have to be taught by righteous men who follow the Most High God. You understand? The Lord is way smarter than man, right? Being as man wants to please his flesh, the Lord knows and understands way more than man how much destruction that you could bring to your own self and your people when you tend to try to please your flesh all of the damn time. You understand? Now, when you look at this empire has taught Blacks, Latinos, and Native American Indians to be exactly like the slave master. Eat what we want, drink what we want, have sex with what we want to have sex with, and things of that nature. And these laws in this Bible prevents the children of Israel from pleasing our flesh in order for the Lord to preserve his chosen people. You understand? So I'm of course, I'm gonna go to the scripts first, and then I got a couple articles, right? Slack you. Share my screen in case y'all don't got y'all Bible with y'all. This first script, first scripture I'm gonna pull is Ecclesiasticus chapter 12 and verse 10 in the Apocrypha, and it reads, and if any brothers sisters is out there, if you tuning in to class on YouTube, I'm gonna be periodically checking the Facebook because I'm live on Facebook as well. But if you got any questions, particularly on topic, go ahead and type them in the chat. And if I can answer your questions, I'm gonna go ahead and get down with you and give you the understanding that you need. All right. Ecclesiasticus chapter 12 and verse 10. Never trust thine enemy. The Lord don't want us to trust our enemies. And you might ask yourself, well, who is this enemy that the Lord is talking about? Well, that enemy is the same enemy that wanted to slaughter our people. You understand? That raped, robbed, and murdered our ancestors. That's your enemy. Your enemy is the one that funneled drugs in your neighborhood. The enemy is the nation of people that put your people at the bottom of the totem pole in America, where we live dirt, piss poor in the ghettos and on these reservations, and we fighting each other tooth and nail for scraps. That's who your enemy is. Your enemy is the one that devised all of these plans to keep us at the bottom. That way, we fight amongst each other, and we never look up to see who's actually moving the chess pieces on the board to keep us a destroyed people. That's who your enemy is. Your enemy is the one that taught you Christianity, or not taught you Christianity, beat Christianity into your people. You understand? For generations to come, right? That's who your enemy is, right? The Lord says, never trust thine enemy. You can't trust your enemy to help you prosper. You understand? You can't trust your enemy and choose the ways of your enemy, because your enemy is going to show you everything to destroy you in order to keep his foot on your neck. In order for him to be prosperous, in order for him to always have the upper hand, he's always going to give you something that's going to destroy you and to get you to go against your God, because your enemy knows who your protector is. Your enemy knows very well that your protector, our Heavenly Father, is only going to protect the children of Israel if we keep his law, statutes, and commandments, and we live perfectly in the Lord's sight. You understand? Ecclesiastes 12:10. Never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. We should never trust our enemies. Your enemy can tell you that pork is the other white meat. You understand? And he might give you all of these commercials, you understand, and show you how good of a delicacy these abominations are. But soon as you get up in age, you understand, from putting all of these toxic animals in your body, you begin to experience all of these diseases that the Lord didn't want us to have from eating these abominations. You begin to experience gout, high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, everything that comes from putting abominations in your body. You understand? When you trust in your enemy, you understand? That's what happens to you. You begin to perish because the ways of your enemy, you understand, are not ways for you to prosper. It's ways for you to destroy yourself. Now, your enemy can live deliciously and prosperous with the abominations that he commits in his life, because the Lord don't chastise these Caucasians because he don't give a damn about them. They're going to have their day in judgment. You understand? But as far as right now, while they still ruling on planet Earth and still got their kingdom right here on planet Earth, they don't suffer the same fates as the children of Israel, because the Lord is going to chastise and punish us. As a matter of fact, let me go to the book of Psalms. Just show me a perfect, Lord, just the Spirit just put a perfect precept in my mind. All right. The book of Psalms, chapter 147 and verse 19. He showeth his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Israel. These law, statutes, and commandments of this Bible was given to the Israelites. You understand? We know his statutes. We know his laws. That's what a statute is, a law. And we also know his judgments. You understand? We understand that when you become a drug dealer or a sorcerer, what the Bible calls it, 10 times out of 10, you understand, you're going to experience either death or jail. That's the judgments of being a sorcerer or a drug dealer. You understand? I'm going to read that again. He showeth his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Israel. He have not dealt so with any nation. These other nations don't have the laws of the Most High God, and they don't have the judgments of the Most High God. They don't understand what it means to be number one in the prison system, number one in disease. You understand? They don't understand what it means to be the top, the bottom totem pole of people in the richest country in the whole goddamn world. They don't understand these judgments that the Lord put on the children of Israel because they haven't had to suffer this fate, because the Lord, our God, gives a damn about Israel and nobody else, right? Verse 20 from the top. He has not dealt so with any nation, and as for his judgments, they have not known them. Praise ye the Lord. Caucasians don't know what it means to have gout, to have high blood pressure, diabetes, and heart disease, you understand, as a whole. Now, you might get one or two that might experience this. Hell, you might get 10,000 on that experience this. You understand? But when you look at our grandmothers and our grandfathers, the health diseases that plagues the black community because the abominations that we have been taught to indulge in, you understand? It's not even close when it comes to these other nations, because the Lord is not judging these other nations because he gives a damn about the children of Israel. All right. Y'all got any questions, comments? Go ahead and put them in the chat. You understand? So, like, let me check Facebook. Comments, go ahead and put them in the chat. The pastor, Adrian Shante Lopez, the pastor from Philly, debated a Muslim about pork. How do you feel about that debate? And Paul, I didn't see that debate, Adrian. And what do you mean about Paul? Give me some more context on what you're talking about, Paul. Are you speaking about Paul saying that that it's okay to eat pork? Because if you think that's the case, then I'll get into what Paul said right now. But I'm gonna wait for your for your response, Adrian, before I get into that topic. But that's a good question because a lot of people don't understand Paul, right? Give me 1 second. Let me get there for you. So, as a matter of fact, since you brought that up, Adrian, I'm going to just go ahead and break down what Paul was talking about, all right? This is the book of Acts, chapter 10, and verse... where do I want to start at? Excuse me, this is not Paul, this is Peter. But I'm going to just break it down because a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people don't understand what Peter's vision was about. You understand? This is the book of Acts, chapter 10, and verse... I'm going to start at verse 10. I'm going to start at verse 9. On the morrow, as they went on their journey and drew nigh unto the city, Peter went up upon the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. And he became very hungry and would have eaten, but while they made ready, he fell into a trance. So they was making some food, right? And Peter went up to pray, you understand? But in the midst of Peter praying, he fell asleep. Salaki, give me 1 second. Salaki, I'm finna pull it up on the screen. Acts 10. So when Paul was waiting on them to make the food, he fell into a trance. All right. or he had a vision or went to sleep, so to speak. You understand? Verse 11. And saw heaven open, and a certain vessel descending unto him, as it had been a great sheet knit at the four corners, and let down to the earth, wherein were all manner of four-footed beasts on the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping things, and fowls of the air. And there came a voice to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. And Peter said, Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. Right? So this voice that Peter heard after he seen all of these manners of these four-footed beasts and creeping things, it told him to get up, kill one of these animals and eat it. And Peter said, no, he's never eaten anything common or unclean, which means Peter kept the dietary law. You understand? He refused to break the law, right? Which is another cut to you Christians, right? Peter is a disciple, you understand, under Christ, right? And in the New Testament, he kept the same laws as the Old Testament. He told this voice, you understand, or this angel, no, he's not going to eat anything common or unclean, right? Verse 15, and the voice spake unto him again the second time, what God hath cleansed, that call not thou common. This was done thrice, and the vessel received up again into heaven. So this happened 3 times. You understand? And this angel said, what God has cleansed, you can't call common, right? Verse 17. Now, while Peter doubted in himself what this vision which he had seen should mean, behold, the men which were sent from Cornelius had made inquiry for Simon's house and stood before the gate. So Peter didn't even know what this vision meant. You understand? He didn't even know what this vision meant at all. So a lot of you Christians saying, "Oh, the vision that Peter had made all of these animals clean so we can eat pork." No, that's not what's going on. How can you be so sure about a vision that Peter had when Peter didn't even know about the damn vision that he had? You understand? Salakia. So now I'm gonna jump down, right? I'm gonna jump down to verse 28. And he said, and so these brothers came to meet Peter. You understand, right? And you know, they came to acquire of Peter, get some wisdom from him, get some guidance from him, right? So this is what Peter said, you understand, when he encountered these brothers, right? And he said unto them, ye know that it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come unto one of another nation, right? So Peter telling them like, hey, look, it ain't really cool for me to be dealing with y'all, you understand? Because if you know the history of Israelites, right, we real territorial as a people, you understand? And what I mean by that in this context of Peter talking to these brothers were Israelites, but they didn't live in Judea. They didn't live in the southern kingdom around Israelites that grew up keeping the law. You understand? Around Israelites that were circumcising their sons, or Israelites that was not eating pork, shrimp, crab, and lobster. You understand? These dudes grew up around Greek culture. You understand? So when Peter said it's an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come unto one of another nation, these brothers that came to come holler at Peter, they was Israelites, but they was considered Gentiles because they didn't grow up in Judea and they didn't necessarily grow up keeping the customs of the children of Israel, right? Now look at what Peter says at the end of the 28th verse. But God hath showed me that I should not call any man common or unclean. That vision was not talking about pork, shrimp, crab, and lobster. That vision was talking about the Lord saying not to call the children of Israel common or unclean because they didn't grow up around the the area of Judea where Israelites kept the customs of the Most High. You understand? So when people get to talking about Peter made something clean that the Lord said was unclean, that's false. That's a goddamn lie. You understand? Salakia. Okay, that cleared that up. So I'm gonna drop that. Let me go to Proverbs 3:31. The book of Proverbs, chapter 3, and verse 31, and it reads, "Envy thou not the oppressor, and choose none of his ways." We are not to envy Caucasian people, you understand, in the power that they have gained from them living an abominable lifestyle. You understand? We're not supposed to choose any of his ways, neither, right? You're not supposed to be a drug dealer. You're not supposed to be a whoremonger. You're not supposed to be a part of the LGBTQ community. You understand? You're not supposed to be a gang member, right? You're not supposed to be a whore or a sodomite. You're not supposed to indulge in none of these acts. You understand? Because those are the ways of our oppressors, right? Salakia. So let me get Exodus 22 and 18. All right. One of the ways of your oppressor is to be a drug dealer. You understand? It's the book of Exodus, chapter 22 and verse 18. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. You understand? It was a death sentence to be a witch or a warlock or a sorcerer. Now, a lot of people think, you understand, of Harry Potter, you understand, casting spells and all of this type of stuff, right? Which that's a fairy tale version of what a sorcerer is. You understand? A sorcerer is essentially a drug dealer or a drug addict. You understand? Now hold on. Let me unshare my screen real quick so I can make sure y'all see this book, right? So this book, you understand, Designed Advanced Pictorial Bible Dictionary, right? It's a lot, yeah. Something on it. Designed Advanced Pictorial Bible Dictionary, right? Now I'm going to look into this book, and I'm going to give you the definition of sorcery, right? Salaki. Start off with the word witch, because Exodus 22 and 18 said the word witch, okay? Witch, a woman in early England, also a man in league with evil spirits to practice sorcery. You understand? It's sometimes translated. It's sometimes so translated in ASV, often RSV, right? So now, and it reads off a couple of scriptures. You understand, right? Now, I'm gonna jump down to where it says witchcraft, otherwise divination. In the Greek, the word is pharmakia. It means the use of drugs. That's literally what a sorcerer is. A person that indulge in witchcraft or a witch or a warlock or a necromancer or somebody that has a familiar spirit. All of these things pertain to drug use. You understand? That's what a witch is. That's what sorcery is. In order for you to understand the context of what I'm saying as far as like sorcery and the laws that apply to the children of Israel, right here in Exodus, the 22nd chapter and the 18th verse, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. This is one of the judgments for being a sorcerer or a witch. You understand? They were supposed to be put to death in the kingdom of the children of Israel. All right. It's a death offense in the Lord's kingdom to get high, to smoke weed, to use cocaine, to drink syrup. Everything that your oppressor has taught you is cool or it's the norm in the black community. These are sins worthy of death. You understand? So like you, I'm gonna go to Leviticus 20 and 27. Then I got an article for y'all in a hot second. Because blacks, Latinos, and Native American Indians, we are terrible at being evil. The oppressor is great at being evil. You understand? This is the book of Leviticus, chapter 20, verse 27. A man also or a woman that hath a familiar spirit or that is a wizard shall surely be put to death. They shall stone them with stones. Their blood shall be upon them. If you got caught smoking weed in the kingdom of the Most High, you understand? You were going to get stoned with stones. You understand? The high priest will pronounce judgment on you, and you're going to get stoned with stones. They're going to get you up out of here. You understand? Simple, right? Let me give you some more. Deuteronomy 18 and 10. So if anybody got any questions on, well, the Bible don't say you ain't supposed to smoke weed. The Bible say you're not supposed to smoke cigarettes. That's exactly what the Bible says. You understand? That's exactly what the Bible says. The Bible says a person that indulges in the use of drugs or the sale of drugs, they supposed to be put to death. So it's illegal to smoke weed according to God. It's illegal to take perks according to God. It's illegal to drink syrup according to God. You understand? It's illegal to smoke cigarettes according to God. All of these things are witchcraft. You understand? It's the book of Deuteronomy chapter 18 and verse 10. There shall not be found among you one that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that use divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee. Thou shalt be perfect with the Lord thy God. For these nations which thou shalt possess hearken unto observers of times and unto diviners. But as for thee, the Lord thy God hath suffered thee but as for thee, the Lord thy God hath not suffered thee so to do. You understand? So these other nations that we always live round about, they indulged in drug use. You understand? Your so-called Asians, you understand, which is the Moabites and Ammonites. You understand? The Africans, the Philistines, the Egyptians, the Ethiopians. You understand? Your Edomites, the so-called Caucasian man, right? The Arabs, right? When you go to these liquor stores, you see these Arabs, they chewing on some green leaves right there in the liquor store. They literally chewing that green leaf to get high right in there, but claiming to be Muslims, claiming that their body is temples, but they getting high off of that. Like, to be a Muslim, they say, oh, you're not supposed to be drinking liquor. You understand? Meanwhile, they chewing that green herb, whatever the hell it's called. You understand? And it's sorcery. They getting high right then and there. All of these nations have always dealt in sorcery, in witchcraft, in drug use. You understand? Salakia. Let me see if I got another script. Let me go to this article real quick. The Opium Wars. The Opium Wars, right? Were two conflicts between China and Western powers during the mid-19th century. Who do you think the Western powers was? Yeah, that's Caucasian men. You understand? Oh, you thought Big Meech was a kingpin? You thought Felix Mitchell from out here in Oakland was a kingpin? Huh? No. Well, I'm finna show you a kingpin. You understand? The first Opium War was fought from 1839 to 1842 between China and Britain. 1839 to 1842, niggas was still picking cotton. These is your drug lords. You understand? It was triggered by the Chinese government campaign to enforce its prohibition of opium, which included destroying opium stock owned by British merchants and the British East Indian Company. These British merchants, you understand? This is who gotta think about? These is your Rothschilds. You understand? The Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, King Harry. They people. They selling dope. And if you know what opium is the purest form of heroin. You understand? Before Frank Lucas, you understand, and Bubby Johnson sold heroin in Harlem, the British East Indian Company, you understand, sold heroin to Chinese people. They got these people hooked on heroin, and the Chinese government tried to enforce prohibition of opium. And the British went to war behind this. This is a drug war. This is a drug war. You understand? I'm going to read some more. Salakia. The British government responded by sending a naval expedition force to the Chinese government to pay reparations and allow the opium trade. It said they sent a naval expedition to force the Chinese government to pay reparations and allow the opium trade. You know what that sound like? The British, the British East Indian Company, they slid on China behind their dope money. You watch Power? This Power in real life on a major scale in the 1800s. You understand? The white boys is the mob. It's in their blood. This is what they do. The second Opium War was waged by Britain and France against China from 1856 to 1860. We still in slavery. They got another Opium War, and some other white boys jumped on the bandwagon to get a piece of the pie. And consequently resulted in China being forced to legalize opium. You know why? Because they had power. They had them weapons. You understand? They smashed on China and made China agree to let them sell dope in their country and dope their people up. Come on, man. This is how they get out. You understand? And this ain't nothing I'm making up. This is on Wikipedia. You understand? Right, sir. Extortion. You understand? Extortion. So like it, sir. Y'all about Shimmy Al-Shabarakatah. The water for tapping in, sir. I appreciate you. You understand? These are the ways of the oppressor, right? In each war, the superior military advantages enjoyed by European forces led to several easy victories over the Chinese military, which the consequence that China was compelled to sign the unequal treaties to grant favorable tariffs, trade concessions, reparations, and territory to Western powers. The two conflicts, along with various treaties imposed during the century of humiliation, weakened the Chinese government authority and forced China to open specified treaty ports, including Shanghai, to Western merchants. In addition, China ceded sovereignty over Hong Kong to the British Empire, which maintained control over the region until 1997. You mean to tell me? And hold on, is China, is Hong Kong? Let me see what the capital of China is. Capital of China. It's Beijing, but Hong Kong is a pretty big city in China as well. You understand? Population of Hong Kong, 7.5 million. You understand? That's like, hold on, let me see. How many people live in New York City? Sheesh. About 8 million people. So, in essence, the British Empire controlled Hong Kong, which is a city that's a little bit smaller than New York City, for over 100 goddamn years. The white man is the devil that the Bible speaks of. If you don't know, then you know. If you don't know now, you know. Salakia. I'm going to read some more about this opium war. A little bit more. I ain't going to read this whole article because I got a couple other topics that I want to touch on. The first opium war. Oh, Salakia, I already read that. First opium war. The first opium war broke out in 1839 between China and Britain and was fought over trading rights, including the right of free trade and Britain's diplomatic status among Chinese officials. In the 18th century, China enjoyed a trade surplus with Europe, trading porcelain, silk, and tea in exchange for silver. By the late 18th century, the British East Indian Company, EIC, expanded the cultivation of opium in the Bengal Presidency, selling it to private merchants who transported it to China and covertly sold it on to Chinese smugglers. In 1797, the EIC was selling 4,000 chests of opium, each weighing 77 kilograms, to private merchants per annum. You think Frank Lucas was a drug lord? God damn! Hold on. It say the EIC was selling 4,000 chests of opium weighing 77 kilograms. Now hold on. Let me do the math right quick because this is crazy. $77 times 4,000. Good night. 308,000 kilograms. Come on, man. That's a drug kingpin right there. You understand? But blacks, Latinos, and Native American Indians, we would think, you understand, because of these black exploitation films, they wasn't using coffins, hiding. They was kind, sir. They wasn't using. Look, you absolutely correct, right? They wasn't using coffins or none of that to hide it. It was government approved. You understand? But what China had a problem with was its public started to get hooked on heroin or get hooked on opium. That's why they wanted it to stop. You understand? At first, it was all fine and dandy until they seen that these white boys was getting rich off of crippling their people. You understand? But yeah, now you absolutely right, sir. They wasn't using coffins or hiding it. It was government approved. They wasn't doing what Frank Lucas did in the movie American Gangster. They didn't have to hide it. This was coming right on the ships, and they like, oh yeah, that's the 4,000 boxes, selling 77 kilograms. Oh yeah, go ahead and put them right there, and we finna unload them right now. You understand? Government officials is making sure that these kilograms of heroin, you understand, or opium is getting to the right place so they can distribute it, so they can get their money on. You understand? Meanwhile, you got blacks, Latinos, and Native American Indians thinking that when we choose to indulge in being a drug dealer, this is something new, or this is some big thing that's gonna get us rich. No, you're not gonna get rich. You understand? You ain't got the government backing your drug trade. You understand? You got to sneak and do what you're doing, but these white boys do it freely. And when they was not able to do it freely, they took China to war on their own soil. You can't tell me black people are gangsters. That's what white boys is. You understand? Yeah, you're right, sir. We think we Scarface. No, the real Scarface is who? Is the British East Indian Company. And I'm gonna tell y'all one thing: a lot of you blacks, Latinos, and Native American Indians don't know. A lot of these people who are who endowed some of these prestigious Ivy League colleges like Yale and Harvard. You understand? So forth and so on, right? NYU, all of these, a lot of these law colleges. You understand? The descendants of these people that own this British East Indian Company. You understand? They paid for a lot of these buildings to be built in these colleges with opium money. I'm gonna pull that up next. Scarface ain't got shit on the government. The government disciples the GDs. You right, sir. For sure. He ain't got nothing on the real GDs. You understand? The real GDs is the ones that's bringing them crates, you understand, with everything up in there, right? Matter of fact, hold on, let me see if I can find this article. Let me see if I can find this article. Oh, is this it? Give me 1 second. Bear with me. Oh, got him. Hold on. Got him. Hey, Most High in Christ, y'all about Shemel Shabrakatah, sir. I appreciate you, Adawan. Let me show y'all this. All right. Let me show y'all how much of gangsters, you understand, these your oppressor is. You understand how much of a gangster that you not, blacks, Latinos, and Native American Indians. Ivy League schools, it says all. Ivy League schools all had ties to the opium trade in the late 19th century, with major benefactors using their drug money to fund libraries, societies, and even Princeton itself. Hold on. Princeton University was built with drug money. How many of you niggas out there that sold enough kilos of dope to fund a goddamn Ivy League school? I'll wait. It ain't gonna happen because you're not supposed to be doing what your oppressor does. That's why we don't prosper at it. The Lord is not going to allow you to be a drug dealer in the same form and fashion as your oppressor and be as successful as he is, because that's not for us. You understand? Undergraduates even began running opium dens from Boston to New York until a Harvard student overdosed in 1889. So even the people that went to these schools was selling opium on campuses that was funded by opium until somebody overdosed in 1889. Mind you, this is 1889. This ain't 1989. This ain't 1979. This is not 1969. This is not 1959. They've been selling big drugs. You understand? That's what your oppressor do. That's how he live. You understand? Oh, Salakia. Give me 1 second. Bear with me. Right? Let me get back to these dope wars. Get back to these dope wars. In earlier centuries, opium was utilized as a medicine with anesthetic qualities, but new Chinese practices of smoking opium recreationally increased demand tremendously and often led to smokers developing addiction. Successive Chinese emperors issued edicts making opium illegal in 1729, 1799, 1814, and 1831. But imports grew as smugglers and colluded officials in China sought profit. You understand? So these wicked Chinese officials, they got with these British white boys and allowed them to bring their dope into their country in order to get some damn money from them. You understand? You ain't to be, you're not only are you not supposed to be like your oppressor, but you're not supposed to be like the other nations that help your oppressor. You understand? Because these Chinese officials aided your oppressor in getting billions and trillions of dollars off opium and getting their own people strung out on these drugs. You understand? Being a drug dealer is the way of the Caucasian man. You understand? Salakia. I'm going to drop that. Let's get to the next subject. Bear with me. We'll go to Leviticus 18 and 22. The book of Leviticus, chapter 18 and verse 22. So let me share my screen. And it reads, "Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is an abomination." You understand? Your oppressor, right, is a natural sodomite. You understand? Right? That's what he does. Like this dude is everything that the Lord made wrong. Your oppressor made the world believe that it's right and you're supposed to indulge in every wicked, foul act, you understand, in order to please your flesh, right? But the Lord said, thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is an abomination. You understand? An abomination to the Lord is something that the Lord hates. It's a filthy, wicked act that the Lord would otherwise put you to death for, right? The book of Leviticus chapter 20 and verse 13, right? And all of these precepts that I'm pulling to show you how evil it is to be like your oppressor. You understand? This precept upon precept, line upon line. The Lord is saying the same thing throughout this Bible, and he's reiterating it with scripture after scripture. Leviticus 20 and 13. If a man also lie with mankind as he lied with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. Self-explanatory. You understand? In order for you to be able to commit an abominable act, like be a part of the LGBTQ community in the Lord's kingdom, you have to be stoned. So if you want to commit these abominable acts, go right ahead. We will be glad to stone you in the Lord's kingdom, because that is meet. That is just. That's what the Lord requires of you, because you're going to corrupt the whole nation with doing all of these filthy, wicked acts. So the Lord got to get you up out of here in order to preserve the nation as a whole, right? Let me share my screen once again. The gay rights movement and the mob. Now, I know y'all didn't think that the mafia or La Cosa Nostra or Italians organized crime had anything to do with the gay rights movement. Well, I got news for you. They got a lot to do with the gay rights movement. You understand? Because the Caucasian man is the devil that the Bible speaks of. He don't give a damn about nothing but lining his pockets with the money of the world and fulfilling his own lust. The gay rights movement and the mob. The Stonewall Uprising 50 years ago was a rebellion against the mafia too. Nearly 50 years ago, on June 28th, 1969, LGBT people led by drag queens rebelled against a raid by the New York Police Department on the Stonewall Inn gay nightclub. For 2 nights, gay men and gay women fought back against police until they withdrew. Stonewall later became seen as perhaps the most important symbolic event in the modern LGBT rights movement. Now, what does this have to do with the mafia? Let's read some more. Less well known is that the turbulent nights of June 28th and 29th, 1969 were very much a rebellion against the mafia as well. The Stonewall was secretly owned by Matty the Horse, Lonnie Lowe. I don't know if that's an I. That's an I. Aniello. Aniello, right? A high-level caporal regime captain in the Genovese crime family who held hidden interest in a series of gay bars and porn stars in Greenwich Village and Times Square neighborhoods. Mob-run gay bars were notorious for charging high prices for lousy, watered-down drinks from bootleg liquor, mafia house beer, one patron dubbed it. The Stonewall Inn itself was unlicensed, was an unlicensed bottle club, often dirty, with no running water behind the bar. Mobbed up bar owners would periodically let the police run show raids to appease the neighbors and in process sacrifice some of their patrons to humiliating arrests and detentions. So what was the name? Matty the Horse Laniello, right? Was a mob captain, you understand, that owned several gay bars and nightclubs. You understand? Your oppressor is the devil that the Bible speaks of. You understand? This dude literally owned gay bars, you understand, and allowed these sodomites to congregate in an environment, you understand, where he made money off of it, right? It's the same thing as if you are a man and you indulge in a filthy, wicked act of having a sexual relationship at the same time with two women at the same time, you are an LGBTQ advocate. You understand? You are a supporter of that movement. You understand? There's no other way around it. And the mafia is no different. The simple fact that they had these LGBTQ bars and clubs, excuse me, and got paid off of it, you understand, lets you know that they was all for the movement. You understand? It's quite simple. When you look at the fictional show The Sopranos, right? It was a scene where it was this mob dude. He was going to go collect some money from one of these said bars and clubs. Now, of course, this is a fictional show, but they got a lot of things right in this show. You understand? Quite frankly, one of my favorite shows of all time, because I enjoy the essence of watching Caucasians in their true form. You understand? And their everyday life, you understand, as far as like their character and them actually being portrayed in a correct manner. You understand? Because Caucasian men are not nice, easygoing people, great name. They not none of that. They mobsters, they gangsters, they criminals, and they are sodomites who indulge in homosexuality themselves or they condone it. But back to what I was saying about this episode of The Sopranos. So the mob dude was going in there, and he was going in there to come get his cut from the nightclub. Now, when he walked in the nightclub, he actually seen one of the members of a mafia family that he very well knew personally. And when he seen him in there, he was like, oh my, like, what you doing in here? Like, damn, you, I don't want to use the word, but he was like, you a part of this movement? He was like, nah, man, I'm just playing around. Woo. Like, nah. But and I got my theories on why they put this type of stuff in this show, centered around mafia gangsters. And my theory is a lot of these dudes actually indulge in that lifestyle for real, for real. You understand? You can't convince me of nothing different, especially when we got proof of these so-called mobsters running and owning these goddamn LGBTQ whorehouses, you understand, disguised as bars and clubs. You understand? Salakia. Well, go back to the scripts. Like, yeah. Go to the New Testament. Go to Romans 1 and 26. Salakia. The book of Romans, chapter 1 and verse 26, and it reads, "For this cause God gave them up to vile affections, for even their women did change, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature." You understand? The Lord gave these people up to vile affections, and these women changed their natural use to that which is against nature. A natural use of a woman is for her to get married, for her to have a husband, for her to procreate, you understand, have children, raise those children, you understand, teach them the values and the principles of life, you understand, under her husband, of course, and keep the human population going. But nah, not these women. They changed the natural use of themselves to go against nature. You understand? Because it's not natural for a man and a man to have a sexual relationship with each other. It's not natural for a woman and a woman to have a sexual relationship with each other. Because if a woman and a woman have a sexual, if the population of humanity, mankind as a whole, indulged in being a part of the LGBTQ community, we're going to die off in less than 100 years. You understand? Because there's no more babies to be born. That means the earth is not being repopulated. And on top of that, we're going to indulge in these wicked acts, and we're going to get the diseases that the Lord plagues people for indulging in these wicked acts. That's why every time you look up on TV, they got a commercial about some new drug that a sodomite is supposed to take, you understand, to lessen their chances of catching HIV. You understand? Which, of course, you can't beat God. You can't box with God, you understand? And he put these plagues on people for indulging in these abominable acts. Verse 27, and likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another. These are sodomites, you understand? And then we're reading in the book of Romans. I don't know if you know this, but the Roman Empire was Caucasian people. This is what was going on in the Roman Empire. You understand? Christ lived during the time of Caesar and the Romans being a superpower over planet Earth. But it started with the Greeks. You understand? They started the LGBTQ community. Well, I don't want to say they started it. They kicked it back off. You understand? After Sodom and Gomorrah, you understand? They kicked it off when they became a superpower on planet Earth. You understand? Verse 27 from the top again. And likewise, also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another. Men with men, working that which is unseemly. The Lord said, men with men, burning in their lust one toward another, is working which is unseemly. This ain't natural. You understand? This is evil as hell. And receiving in themselves the recompense of their error, which was meat. And you know what that receiving in themselves, that recompense of their error, that's HIV. That's AIDS. And the Lord said it is meat, meaning this is good for them. You understand? Salakia. Go to 1 Corinthians 6 and 9. This is the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 9. Know ye not that the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom of the kingdom of God, excuse me. Be not deceived. Don't you know that the unrighteous ain't going to receive ain't going to inherit the kingdom of God? Don't let nobody fool you. Neither fornicators. You understand? That's what a fornicator is, a sodomite, a LGBTQ community, a woman that commits adultery on her husband, a whoremongerer. Those are fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminates. An effeminate man is a sodomite. Some like a dude that's going to go get his toes and nails done and paint his fingernails. That's what it means to be effeminate. Nor abusers of themselves with mankind. That's another precept or another phrase for a sodomite. You understand? The Lord said you're not going to inherit the kingdom of heaven. You understand? Salakia. 1 Timothy 1 and 10. These Christians got the nerves to say the law is done away with. No, this ain't the law is not done away with according to what I'm reading. You understand? For 1 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 10. For whoremongers, for them that defile themselves with mankind, for men stealers, for liars, and perjured persons, and if there be any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine. You understand? These people are not the people that's going to inherit the kingdom of heaven. Whoremonger, you understand? For them that defile themselves with mankind. Let me give you some more scripts. Go back to the Old Testament. Deuteronomy 23 and 17. This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 23 and verse 17. There shall be no whore of the daughters of Israel, nor a sodomite of the sons of Israel. This is talking about whoredom between men and women. You understand? Our sisters are not supposed to be whores. You understand? And our men are not supposed to be whores. They're not supposed to be sodomites as well. You understand? A whore is a sister that will sleep with multiple men, a promiscuous woman, or with multiple women. A sodomite is a man that's going to sleep with other men. You understand? Salakia. Leviticus 19 and 29. Salakia. And it reads, do not prostitute thy daughter to cause her to be a whore, lest the land fall to whoredom and the land become full of wickedness. We're not supposed to be prostituting our daughters. You understand? The Lord told us to be the fathers to the fatherless. A lot of these sisters that's out there selling their bodies or working in these strip clubs, they don't have fathers. That's why they was touched when they was children. That's why they was molested when they was teenagers, when they was little girls. The Lord told us that we're supposed to be a father to these sisters. You understand? In turn, us as a nation, you ever heard that saying, it takes a village to raise a child? Us as a nation, we supposed to be fathers to these sisters that don't have fathers. You understand? You're not supposed, like, when you look at the relationship between a pimp and one of his workers, what does she call him? She call him daddy. The Lord said we ain't supposed to prostitute our daughters, your physical daughter, and some sister of your nation that can be considered a daughter to you as well. And it's not about age at all. You understand? Because a man is supposed to lead this nation. You understand? a brother that's young in age, but in wisdom, he's, you understand, elder in wisdom. He can be a father figure to a sister that's way older than him. You understand? We are not permitted to whore out our daughters. You understand? Now let me show you this. Right? I'll show you all this. Prostitution in the United States. Now listen good to this. Prostitution is illegal in every U.S. state except Nevada, where licensed brothels are permitted in some counties, and Maine, where selling sex is decriminalized, but buying sex is illegal. Prostitution nonetheless occurs in all states. A 2008 report by the National Institute of Justice estimates that 15 to 20% of men in the U.S. have paid for sex. 15 to 20% of men in the whole United States. You know who that is? That's your Caucasian slave master. He the one who paying for this. You understand? Reading on. The 10th Amendment does not grant the federal government the power to regulate commercial sex. Therefore, it is exclusively the domain of states, except as it pertains to interstate commerce, which Congress may regulate with laws such as the Mann Act. In most states, prostitution is considered a misdemeanor in a category of public order crime. Prostitution was once considered a vagrancy crime. Now, look at what's going on with P. Diddy. P. Diddy is fighting for his life to be a free black man again because he indulged in these same wicked sex acts. You understand? He indulged in the ways of his slave master. So, Lucky, let me jump down so I can give you the history of it, right? History, 18th century. Some of the women in the American Revolution who followed the Continental Army served the soldiers and officers as sex partners. Prostitutes were a worrisome presence to Army leadership, particularly because of the possible spread of venereal diseases. In modern terms, sexually transmitted infection or STIs, right? 19th. So hold on. Let me go back real quick. So it says some of the women in the American Revolution who followed the Continental Army served the soldiers and officers as sexual partners. So these women that damn. So they basically saying that the Continental Army, you understand, had women a part of that army that served as sexual partners in order to keep them from buying prostitutes so they don't get infected, you understand, and be useless for the battlefield, right? In the 19th century, parlor house brothels catered to upper class clientele, while baldy houses catered to the lower class. At concert saloons, men would eat, listen to music, watch a fight, or pay women for sex. Over 200 brothels existed in Lower Manhattan. Over 200 brothels existed in Lower Manhattan. If you know the geographic state of Manhattan, you got Upper Manhattan, right, which is where a lot of blacks and Latinos live, or the poor class of people that live in Manhattan. And then you got Lower Manhattan, where you got places like the Diamond District, Tribeca, all of these upscale neighborhoods and industrial places where a lot of money is being made. You understand? these 200 brothels were ran, you understand, by high price pimps, people like Lucky Luciano. Lucky Luciano actually, and him being the godfather, the so-called godfather of the modern day Italian mafia, organized crime. Well, he actually went to prison for being a pimp, essentially. You understand? While official acts of regulation were being, I jumped the gun. Prostitution was illegal under the vagrancy laws, but was not well enforced by police and city officials who were bribed by brothel owners and madams. Of course, they wasn't enforcing it because they was going over there having sex with these women too. Attempts to regulate prostitution were struck down on the grounds that regulation would be counter to the public good. That's a lot here. So, in other words, you understand, these high up city officials and politicians, you understand, they didn't want to regulate these brothels and prostitution in general because they felt like it wasn't good for the public. And really, it wasn't good for them because they was indulging in all of this. You understand? While official acts of regulations were being struck down, there were those of more religious perspective who took this act of performing prostitution in their own hands, or reforming prostitution in their own hands, excuse me. Blah, blah, blah. But you get the gist of it, you understand? These, hold on, Salakia. I'm gonna read it. I gotta read it. The Magdalene Society was an organization in the 1800s that had sought to take prostitutes off the streets and turn them into respected women. This is the 1800s, motivated by the concern that Philadelphia was falling into social disorder. The society founded an asylum to take women off the streets. 138 women sought refuge here in the years between 1807 and 1820 and were placed with religious families who taught them how to read, convert them into a respectable woman, how to read, convert them into a respectable woman. Most of the women who entered the asylum only stayed for 2.5 months, using the open doors as a temporary place to live off the street. The biggest success story of the society was that of Elizabeth Ogden, a woman who was deemed reform and opened a school for children. Now, the Magdalene Society, right, was it says they were started in the early 1800s. So from 1807 to 1820, right, they was reforming so-called reforming these promiscuous women, right? When you look at the history of this country, Blacks, Latinos, and Native American Indians in the 1800s, we was in slavery. These people were drug dealers while we was in slavery. They was pimps and prostitutes when we was in slavery. You understand? And you know, they was doing everything that they have trained the Black community to indulge in when we was picking cotton. When we was in the fields tending to their animals, picking their cotton, you understand? Cleaning their land, tending to their plantations, you understand? Being lynched, hung, right? Being essayed, right? Men, women, and children. They was pimps, prostitutes, and drug dealers. We wasn't doing none of that. We was their slaves, and this is how they was getting down. We wasn't in gangs either. Show you where gangs come from. Salaki, hold on. Gangs in the United States. Approximately 1.4 million people in the United States were part of gangs as of 2011, and more than 33,000 gangs were active in the country. These include national street gangs, local street gangs, prison gangs, outlaw motorcycle clubs, and ethnic and organized crime gangs. Many American gangs began and still exist in urban areas. In many cases, national street gangs originated in major cities such as New York City and Chicago, but they later grew in other American cities like Albuquerque and Washington, D.C. Street gangs can be found all across the United States, with their membership differing in terms of size, racial and ethnic makeup, and organizational structure. The most significant danger is posed by prominent national street gangs, as they engage in the smuggling, production, transportation, and distribution of substantial amounts of illegal drugs, often resorting to extreme violence. In an attempt to earn recognition from their adversaries, local street gangs frequently emulate the larger and more influential national gangs. Over time, loosely structured gangs pose a growing threat by expanding their involvement in drug trafficking, especially in the smuggling of drugs into the United States, and establishing connections with international criminal groups and drug traffic organizations, right? So that's basically the makeup of what a gang is, right? But let's go to the origins of gangs. The earliest street gangs emerged at the end of the American Revolutionary War in the 1780s. 1780s. I ain't the smartest man in the world, but niggas was still in slavery in the 1780s. The Emancipation Proclamation was not until 1865, and niggas was still slaves after 1865. This is the 1700s, the 1780s. This is about 120 some odd years before black people were so-called free from slavery. However, these early street gangs had questionable legitimacy, and more serious gangs did not form until at least the early 1800s. The earliest of these serious gangs formed in northeastern American cities, particularly in New York. Now let's pay attention, New York, to New York real quick. Early street gangs in the Northeast, 1780 to 1870. In the 18th century, slaves living in New York, slaves living in New York formed two paramilitary groups, which could be seen as a gang, like Smith's Fly Boys and Longbridge Boys. Notable examples of slave rebellions, as well as white backlash to perceived threat of them in colonial New York, include New York Slave Revolt 1712 and New York Conspiracy 1741. So now, understand this. When they say these slaves, they say these slaves were gang-like. And this is literally just the white man being a devil once again, because these slaves basically got together to revolt against being slaves. That's not a gang. That is not a gang by no means. It said they was gang-like, or they seemed gang-like, but this ain't a gang. This is a bunch of oppressed Negroes that don't want to be slaves anymore. That's not a gang. We gonna get into it though, right? In the colonial New York include the New York State Revolt of 1712 and the New York Conspiracy of 1741. Now these are slave revolts. That ain't a gang. In the early 1800s, 3 immigrant gangs entered the Northeast U.S. via New York, English, Irish, and German. I'm going to read that again. In the early 1800s, 3 main immigrant gangs entered the Northeast U.S. via New York. You got English, Irish, and German. I'm not the smartest man in the world, but don't the people that come from English, England, Ireland, and Germany, aren't all of these Caucasians? I'm going to read on. On the Lower East Side of New York, these immigrant groups formed into gangs in an area known as the 5 Points. Of these were the Smiths, Vly Gang, the Bowery Boys, and the Broadway Boys, all three of which predominantly Irish immigrants. These early gangs were not exclusively engaged in criminal activity. Their members often were employed as common laborers. After the early 1830s, however, gangs began to focus on criminal activity. One example being the 40 Thieves, which began in the late 1820s in the 5 Points area. Other criminal gangs of the pre-Civil War era included Dead Rabbits and the 5 Points Gang. The 5 Points Gang in particular became influential in recruiting membership to gangs and toward established gang relationships with politicians. These Caucasians started these gangs in New York. And not only was it the common young hoodlums in these gangs, but they had relationships with politicians. The New York City draft riots were said to have been ignited by young Irish street gangs. Herbert Ashbury depicted some of these groups in his History of Irish and American Gangs in Manhattan, and his work was later used by Martin Scorsese as the basis for the motion picture Gangs of New York. However, these early gangs reached their peak in the years immediately prior to the Civil War, and gang activity largely dissipated by the 1870s. Reemergence and growth, 1870 to 1940. During the late 1800s, gangs reemerged as a criminal force in the Northeast, and they emerged as new criminal enterprises in the American West and the Midwest. In New York, after the Civil War, the most powerful gang to emerge was the Wyo's, which included reconstructed members of the previous 5 Points area gangs. Another late 19th century New York gang was the Jewish Eastman Gang. Ooh, you small hats was gang members too. Remember, this is from the 1800s, from the 1800s to the 1940s. When was the Crips and Bloods? When the Crips came out, 60s? Maybe precursors late 50s. But we didn't read the GDs and the Vice Lords. Well, they started gangbanging in what? The 60s, the 50s? These the late 1800s. You got Jewish and Irish gangs. Meanwhile, Chinese immigrants formed tongues, which were highly structured gangs involved in gambling and drug trafficking. These tongues were matched in strength by an emergent Italian organized crime network that became the American Mafia. Gangs emerged in the Midwest in the late 19th and 20th centuries in Chicago. European immigrant groups such as Poles, or the Polish, and Italians formed the core member of Chicago gangs, while only 1% of gangs were black. Not only did Caucasian men start gangs in America in general, but when you look at a city like Chicago that's known as a so-called gangster city, when these Polish and Italian gang members like Al Capone, When they was gang members running Chicago, you understand, in the early 1900s, only 1% of the gangs were black in Chicago. Imagine that. However, gangs in the 19th century were often multi-ethnic, as neighborhoods did not display the social polarization that has segregated different ethnic groups in a postmodern city. The gangs of Chicago in the late 19th century were particularly powerful in the areas around the Chicago stockyards and engaged in robbery and violent crime. You keep reading on, you're gonna hear about Polish gang members, Italian gang members, the Italian, the Chicago outfit, all of this type of stuff. You understand? To be a gang member is Caucasian culture. To be a criminal is Caucasian culture. To be a drug dealer is Caucasian culture. To be a pimp or a whore is Caucasian culture. Blacks, Latinos, and Native American Indians, get them people their culture, take your culture back of righteousness, and separate from your oppressor. With that being said, Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah brought a thumb to the brothers. Yahweh Shamal the thumb by Hashim Yahweh Shah to the sisters. Shalom, Israel.